Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for coming out tonight to our Camarillo Airport Part 150 Noise Compatibility Planning Study. Tonight we're going to be hosting an open house for you, and then we're going to be going into a formal public hearing. Before we get started, I wanted to call up our interpreters. We have a Mixteco and a Spanish interpreter here in case anybody needs their services. And they're just going to come up and say hello and say a few words.
Hi, good evening. My name is Martha. I'll be your Spanish interpreter tonight. If anyone needs Spanish interpretation, please come to the back to our table. We'll be glad to provide you with an equipment. I'll repeat this in Spanish. Buenas noches para las personas que necesiten interpretación en español. Estamos aquí para servirles. Tenemos una mesa atrás. Si pueden acercarse con nosotros para darles el equipo. Gracias.
And I will say this in Mixteco. Tatsa binti vena latina yo kiwi chitaro china tsinini onda kwa atu unoni sanya nyo sanya nyora ka aveni para nanda kwa atu unoni. Tatsa bideni. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to go over our agenda for this evening. So we have a packed agenda, so we would ask that you guys would bear with us and just sit tight while we get through all of this. So we're going to start out with how we got here. We're going to move on to the study progress. Then we're going to talk about the department's current efforts to address noise concerns. Then we're going to go into a quick update on our new approach and procedure analysis study. And then we're going to open it up for a non-formal question and answer session. So for those that have been here before and have participated in the past, this is when you can write down your question on a question card, and we'll be passing those out in just a few minutes. We'll collect those, bring them up here, and we'll read out your questions, and the panel behind me will address those. So hopefully we have enough time for that. If we don't, we will hold those questions and revisit them after the public hearing. So just hold tight, and we're going to kind of get through this together. And then after we do that non-formal Q&A session, we're going to close the open house, and we're going to open up the formal public hearing. So the formal public hearing will open at 7 p.m., and that's when we're going to go over a brief PowerPoint presentation. We're going to go through the public hearing instructions and open the floor for your public comments. And we'll have a court reporter up here as well who will be taking those. Okay, so with that, we're just going to remind everybody quickly about the code of conduct here. The county is committed to ensuring that all participants can fairly and clearly share their ideas, comments, and concerns about this project and the Camarillo Airport. To provide a safe and equitable process, please remember to treat each other with kindness and respect, including your neighbors, the moderator, and the panel. Respect the format of the meeting and maintain a conversational tone. Okay, with that, we're going to turn it over to your Director of Airports, Mr. Keith Rethus.
Thank you, Stacy. First of all, I want to thank all of you for your time tonight and throughout the process. We've been at this process for almost 3 years. And I'm happy to say we're at the end of that. So I do appreciate your time, not only tonight, but throughout the process. So what we found is, as we have these public meetings, we've got a mixture of first-timers and those who have been with us the entire time. So I kind of want to go back to almost 3 years ago when we started this process. The airport was going through a master plan process, looking at what we were doing with the airports. That led to a lot of feedback, not only from community members, the city of Camarillo, but city council member Trevor with us tonight, feedback, and even the city went through and did a survey of the community members. And the key out of all of that, both the feedback we received directly and the survey that the city did, was they really wanted to see the airport kind of stay its same role, not really significant changes. So we pivoted from a master plan where you kind of look at what you're going to be doing with the airport to just what the FAA bare minimum requires, which is an airport layout plan, to keep it the same as it has been in its role, which is a general aviation airport. So So we just wrapped that up a couple months ago. And we also decided to implement and conduct basically a carbon 50 noise study, which is what we're doing tonight, final public hearing. So those are the things that we kind of started with, and when we started that, the community really wanted to know, what are you going to do for us about mitigating noise? And that's what the culmination of tonight is that final process. So I'm going to say this, you've seen me, if you've seen at our public meetings, the key here is we are not changing the role at the airport. Camarillo Airport is going to remain a general aviation airport. We're not looking, I won't name the name, you all know the name, large air cargo. You won't hear me say it, we saw it in the newspaper for many years. They're not coming. Airline service, commercial airline service, not coming to Camarillo. And the last is not changing the configuration, the size of the runway. We're remaining supporting the joint powers agreement we, the county, signed with the city of Camarillo back in 1976. So that doesn't mean that things don't change and we have more or less airplanes and those will happen, but the role of the airport is going to stay the same, and those big ones up there, that's not changing. So if you don't leave here with anything else tonight, is that remember this, we are committed to the community. We have the role of operating our airports for all of our stakeholders. So that's aviation, that's the community members, and we're looking for that balance. That's what the document is here tonight. Moving forward, you're going to hear later in the presentation some of the things we're doing now, and some of the big things that are about to, we just basically kicked off. So you'll hear from some of the team members. And our efforts won't stop. They're long-term, basically perpetuity. We understand that with our team addressing noise issues in the community. So I will now kick it on to Aaron Powers, our new Deputy Director of the Airports, as a leadership.
Good evening. For my part this evening, I'm here to walk you through how the study has progressed over the last 2.5 years and to talk about the remaining steps to close out this study. First, I just want to remind, oops, my picture. The Part 150 noise study, especially maybe for those who haven't been part of the process before, is really made up of 2 parts. One called the noise exposure maps, or the NEMs, and then there's a second part of the study, which is the noise compatibility plan, and the NCP. And so starting in 2022, we actually kicked off the study, began with data collection for the NEMs, and then we followed up in 2023 with our first public meeting. We also conducted community noise measurements in 2023 over a 4-month period. And then we held a second public workshop, and we were able to, through that process, collect comments, make adjustments to the plans based on some of those comments. And we submitted the noise exposure map portion of the study to the FAA in December of 2023 for their review. While we were waiting for the FAA's review of the NEMs, we went ahead in 2024 and kicked off the noise compatibility plan, because this is also where we felt the community was going to be most interested, because this is where we could explore noise alternatives and maybe methodology that we could use to help address some of the issues. So we did kick off a community listening session and some technical conferences, which included city and county planners, aviation pilot representatives, community neighbors, and community neighborhood representatives, and as well as the general public. In 2025, in June of 2025, just a couple months ago, we actually received acceptance of those noise exposure maps from the FAA that we had submitted in December of 2023. So it's not a very quick process. But we continue to march forward with our noise compatibility plan. We revised the draft document based on those first listening sessions and the technical advisory groups. And we have the plan, and we published the plan in July, just July 3rd, for a public comment period. So it is, the study documents are available on the study website. We have a lot of information about where that study website is if anyone needs remembering. We are accepting public comments here tonight at the public hearing, but we also will be accepting any written public comments through August 18th. And those comments will be part of the record. I also want to say that we've set this format tonight and we're going to have an informal Q&A session because we want to be able to answer questions if we can. But once the public hearing starts, it's a very prescribed process and we won't be able to answer questions. We just have to listen to the public comments. And we know that sometimes that can be a little bit frustrating when people really have questions they want to hear answers to. So again, I know that Stacy mentioned that if we don't get you your question during the informal, we're going to stay after the public hearing closes and we'll continue to answer those questions we didn't get to and any others that may come up. So I think the last point I want to make is that, I'm talking about where we are up through tonight, but the next steps really include taking that finalized document where we've collected final comments. We actually will have a written responses will be incorporated into that final draft document, and then we will take it before the airport advisory boards, the Board of Supervisors for approval. And if we anticipating they do move forward with approval, we would then look to submit it to the FAA, and then we would be waiting for the FAA to review and eventually accept the document. And that, based on our first process, could take a while, but we'll continue to keep tabs.
Okay, as you can see from the picture, I am not Jeanette. So she is feeling under the weather tonight, and I thought after talking with her that it would not be a super spreader event tonight and have her come in and talk. So I'm going to step in for her. But I do want to recognize Jeanette for all the great work she's done. We hired her for the first time in a position, communications and community engagement manager is her role. You probably, hopefully, you've seen a lot of communication coming out of her office specifically. But her hiring, and the next slide maybe, there we go. So again, her position 3 years ago was the start of our commitment to noise mitigation and the issues going on. Here is a laundry list of the things already implemented. So hiring her position, she's done extensive outreach to the community on a regular basis. Those are simple things, simple to do, but important to the community. When Naval Air Station has some special event with more aircraft going in, she can put a message out. Southern California Edison is doing a grid low-level helicopter pattern across the communities because they're doing their inspections of their pipelines, electrical lines, those kinds of things, gets that information out. So it's very key, her role in the communication side. The Fly Friendly program, we just had our 4th annual Fly Friendly, where we bring flight schools and the pilots in and explain what the feedback from our community is about noise, what's going on, so they can do better and do modifications to how and when they fly. Purchased our flight tracking system. We did that a couple of years ago. Regular meetings with the city of Camarillo. They're looking for updates. I just did one a couple of weeks ago on where we are on a few of our projects. Noise is a focus always with them. Jet specific, Old Town community is a lot of our noise concerns with the amount and types of aircraft, jet aircraft coming in. That's our focus, which will lead to the last item here in introduction. So what you see here, and that was when we first started these meetings, is, hey, airport, what are you doing for us now? Here's that list of what we're doing now. And the last piece in the introductions is a team that is going to, we've hired for just under $400,000 to help us over the next year, year and a half to do analysis on the approaches for jet aircraft. Are there other things we can do to move those approaches away from our communities? So without further ado, I will introduce Brian, I think who's going to do from Mead & Hunt, introduce the team that we just hired, and then I'll go over what they're going to be looking at doing.
Thank you, Keith. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here with you tonight. My name is Brian Moore, and I'm with a company called Mead & Hunt. We are a consultant that helps U.S. airport operators all over the country with issues of infrastructure, aircraft noise, airport planning. I specialize in airport planning, and what we are doing with the county is building on the Part 150 study. So what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes is not that study that you came for the public hearing for, but a new study that the department, that the county has decided to embark upon to try to make change. Change in the form of exploring modifications to how aircraft arrive to and depart from Camarillo Airport. Obviously, that is a very complex technical matter, and it is in a highly regulated environment. Those regulations are mostly with the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA. We will be exploring modifications in this study and coordinating those modifications, not only with the public, also with a technical advisory committee comprised of local pilots and aviation experts. We'll be vetting what the public likes for future procedures with the Federal Aviation Administration, as well as other entities like the Department of Defense, to try to find ways to change how aircraft arrive and depart to potentially reduce noise exposure. So this is a voluntary study that the county has decided to embark upon. I think our battery died.
It wasn't just me.
Wasn't just Keith. So again, I'm with Mead & Hunt. We are teamed up with Ariano Associates, who I think you know, Stacy from the public meetings. You will see them at, we have 3 public meetings as part of this airspace approach study. So there'll be 3 public meetings as part of this study, so you'll see Stacy and her team, as well as myself. And then the subject matter expert and the person who will be presenting the scope of work for this effort is Alex Siebel to my left here. He'll brief you on what we're actually going to look at throughout the study. Those 3 public meetings, if you're interested, the first one will be in the fall of this year. The second one will be in the first quarter of 2026. And the third and final public meeting for this study will be in the second quarter, April-May timeframe. There is a website for this study, which is on a fact sheet that you can get at the table outside the meeting room where you may be signed in. There's a fact sheet that has the airport website, the project website, as well as the timeline for this airspace study. There's also a document of frequently asked questions with 9 questions regarding this study. The thing I want to leave you with is that this is a new study building on some of the feedback that the county received during the execution of Part 150. With that, I'll turn it over to Alec.
Height adjustment. Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here. Hello, I'm Alex Siebel with Flight Tech Engineering. I'm the president and founder. Thanks, Brian, for the introduction. And so Flight Tech is an FAA authorized navigation service provider firm. I know that's a long title, so what do we do? Flight Tech implements designs and implements, researches, and ultimately flight validates and maintains instrument flight procedures all across the U.S. Our range extends from the tip of Alaska all the way to the tip of Florida and every point in between. So we have projects here in California and in most states. So as part of that, excuse me, as part of that process, with our experience of developing those flight procedures throughout the U.S., we typically get pulled into projects like these where we're looking at exploring ways to make meaningful changes and develop new procedures that potentially help and assist with mitigating noise issues out in the community. So as part of that effort, I'll just introduce the wider team. Well, I am going to be leading the Flight Tech effort. Our team is more than just me. We are comprised of air traffic control specialists, procedure design specialists, the folks who actually build and know all the rules and criteria sets that goes into developing these really specialized procedures and have experience working with the FAA or either were at the FAA. And then we also have avionics engineers as well as pilots and charting and coding specialists as well. So besides me and not here tonight, but that will be part of this new project, is Bill Dunn, who's our ATC specialist, Mr. Rochelle Daly, who's our senior TERP specialist, Jeff Gorman, also one of our procedure design, which we call TERPs or Terminal and Route Airspace. Chris Sheehy, who's our procedure and avionics engineer, and Nathan, who's our flight validation and charting specialist. And those folks will all be bringing their, as you can see, vast experience to the team as we explore the Camarillo airport procedures. Okay, providing a general overview of this new project that we're embarking on. We're going to be starting that off by first reviewing your current and future aircraft fleet mix that are operating in Camarillo County. It's important to understand, in order to develop effective procedures that can actually be used and be put to meaningful use, we have to ensure that we know what type of aircraft are operating and what type of computer system avionics that are on board, the navigation units that are on board those aircraft. So then, once we determine that, we're going to collect feedback from not only the Part 150 study, but we're going to be having, as Brian mentioned, 3 open sessions to collect feedback, and then create, that will go into developing those new instrument procedures, the new instrument flight procedure proposals that we put forward. It's all going to be based on feedback.
Yep. Clarify one thing. What we're gathered here with the understanding that you've already committed that flight paths will not be extended, that our airfield itself will not be extended at all, and that no water jets, no technical cutoff. But that's a done deal. Is that correct? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just to jump in here, we're going to have a question and answer session right when he's done, so just hold on to that. And if you want to write that down as well, you can write it down and pass it up, otherwise you can say it again.
No problem, yeah, we appreciate the feedback. Okay, so moving on into that process, once we collect that feedback from the stakeholders in the community, we'll then be putting together prototypes, and that's what the team that I just introduced earlier is going to be working on to develop, and nothing will be moved forward until it's been reviewed. Once any new procedure prototypes have been reviewed, we'll then submit recommendations at the end of the analysis to the FAA. They'll go through their procedure gateway, and then they will have the chance to adopt those new procedures. If we run into issues with the FAA in terms of bandwidth or availability to implement those procedures on a timely basis, there's also an option to implement those procedures on an accelerated route. Once a procedure proposal is accepted by the FAA or other routes, then a flight validation trials will occur. And then those, if accepted and the procedures pass their flight validations, then they are published. That time frame, it can be all over the board, but usually on the early side, it can be as quick as 2 years, sometimes longer if additional reviews are needed to be done by the FAA. Just a overview of our timeline and the meeting schedule. As we mentioned a little bit earlier, we're kicking this off now. We've just started with the first TAC, which is the Technical Advisory Committee, on July 17th. Then we are going to move on towards the public meetings in September and October of 2025, again in January and February, and then finally in April and May of 2026, with then recommendations based on the feedback collected going to the FAA in the summer of 2026, which is the goal. Okay, so a lot of talk about flight procedures and possible changes, and so what exactly is this going to be? What main topics are we going to be looking at? So in particular, we're going to be exploring first new instrument approach procedures for runway 8 to try and foster in preferential use of runway 8 when possible. Looking at glide path angle adjustments. So essentially a higher slope to keep the aircraft spaced higher away from the ground as they approach the airport. Also looking at on the runway 26 side, so landing to the west of Camarillo, offset final approach course alignments to offset procedures further towards the south as well. And then also looking at, there's some new emerging regulations that are coming this way soon in the FAA rule set that will allow some new visual type guided procedures that might also provide some relief. We have some specialists in the team who are going to be looking at new visual guided paths as well to runway 8 and 26 to help route the aircraft away from dense residential areas. Okay, so primary goals, first and foremost for this project is like others have mentioned, exploring meaningful changes to the flight paths, the instrument flight procedures that exist currently in Camarillo, and try to find a solution that could provide meaningful change to the community. And so you heard me mention, or multiple times now, talking about instrument flight procedures. While we can control the flight paths of those aircraft that are on instrument flight procedures, aircraft that are operating on visual flight rules or VFR, as you commonly hear, those aircraft are sometimes not operating on a defined procedure or within tower control, and those aircraft, there's a lot more flexibility that the FAA gives them on how they can maneuver. So while we can't directly control VFR flight paths or visual flight paths, we can, and it is through flight quiet programs, or flight-friendly programs, and supplements and website information help influence VFR flight operations. And now this is leading into our next slide, which is talking a little more about the regulatory framework that we're going to be working within for this next project. So you heard me mention at the beginning, not all aircraft have the same navigation capabilities, just based on when they were manufactured and what type of navigation systems they have on board the aircraft. That's one item that we have to account for. The more important one is, especially when it comes to designing procedures and making all the different segments and points work and make them flyable for a wide range of aircraft, whether that's maybe a small Cessna flight training aircraft to a larger turboprop aircraft per se. Those all have different speed and bank angle requirements, and those all go into the design of the procedure and set limitations for how we can design. So sometimes you might look at a map and go, why can't we just make a really hard 90-degree or 120-degree turn right there and just that would avoid everything? And well, in most cases, certainly we could It would be nice if we could do that in VFR aircraft, have the capability to do that for IFR rules operating underneath the FAA's strict framework. We have to provide them more anticipation for turns and making sure they don't overbank to keep them safe during instrument conditions that they'd be operating in. So those are some of the things that we're going to have to be working with them. Most importantly, which I promise I won't go too far deep in the subject, is air traffic control. And that leads into a good slide here on the next page, which is Camarillo Airport's right in the middle of a complex and very busy airspace, as everyone is aware. And you've got Oxnard and Point Mugu to the west and southwest, and Van Nuys, and LA to the east and south. And so we have, we're dealing with a lot of different intersecting flight paths. And that'll be one of our challenges that as we explore every new concept. While it may be the best concept for completely avoiding noise over one specific area, it may cause a conflict with, say, for example, military aircraft going into Point Mugu. And so those are all things that we have to coordinate with different controlling sectors at different airport facilities. Okay, some of the design methodologies that we get to use when we're exploring new procedure design can be both conventional based, which is basically using ground-based nav aids. So antenna transmitters on the ground that are directing aircraft. We can also use what's called area navigation. And this is more commonly used in the modern area, which is basically, think of it as GPS satellite navigation, point to point. Then on the right side image, you see what's called RMP, which is Required Navigation Performance. We're not going to be focusing on that. That's airlines and a large 737 aircraft. And as noted, that's not what's being forecasted for the airport, so we won't be focusing on those type of procedures or any procedures that would enable that type of equipment. So to put it simply, we're going to be right in the middle, right there where you see labeled RNAV, area navigation, which allows for, you still get the benefit of point to point and being able to route aircraft around certain areas. And you get that compatibility with a lot of systems that are on, navigation systems that are on general aviation aircraft. But it's not as strict, doesn't have as long as segments, it's more flexible than conventional navigation. So that's where we're going to be focusing on, the middle ground for our Camarillo study. And then this is just a fun slide. I put this together just to trying to make sense of what we're actually proposing. So here's an example of approaches, flight paths into runway 26. These are what the aircraft are dialing up, and they're on an instrument flight plan coming into an airport, and they're transitioning from the route environment where they were up high, and they're now descending down to the runway. And so this is what we mean when we talk about the approaches. It's a pre-programmed path that the aircraft fly. Currently, right now, they're either fly straight into the runway, and that's depicted on that red path right in the middle. And then there's also a procedure that takes them farther north of the runway too, which is the top line in bluish purple there at the top. And some of the things that we're going to be looking at and exploring as part of the study is offsetting those aircraft, offsetting them away from denser housing and community areas. And so an example of some of those offsets that we're going to be exploring and that meaningful change that we're talking about are depicted in the green and kind of a white and blue or light blue lines on the lower two portions of the image there. So those are the offsets from 2.6. We're going to be looking at this for both runway ends, also a lot of point-to-point designs to route aircraft away from these dense areas. Okay, that's the overview of our project, the new project for the approach and procedure analysis. Look forward to any comments and feedback. We've created a website that will detail this new project. There's a QR code there that you're welcome to snap. And also for any specific questions about the project, Jeanette is going to be the point of contact for routing those questions, and her email is there at the bottom of the screen. So thanks everyone for your time and allowing me to introduce the new approach and procedure analysis, and I'll turn it back over to the project team.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we are going to move it along for the community question and answer session. So we have about 20 minutes, give or take. And this is where we're going to take your questions. Again, these are, again, this is not part of the public hearing process. So this is just dialogue. We are looking to answer any questions that you might have about the noise study or anything that you heard just now. And then we will formally start the public hearing about 7 p.m. That's when we'll take your formal comments for the record. So hopefully that makes sense. So if you have questions, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we can also collect your question card and we can read them out. So if you have a question card written out, raise your hand and our staff will come over and grab those from you. And if you'd like to, okay, yeah. So let's go ahead and bring a mic to you. Jessica, Elsa, Stevie, can we also get microphones out? So we'll start with the cards as they come up, and then we'll go out to the public. Is this PowerPoint available to us? This will be uploaded to the study website. Perfect, thank you, ma'am. Yes, so just look for the Part 150 study website icon on the website, and that's where the PowerPoint will be. Thanks, Jessica. Okay. Okay, this one's from Nancy. Over the last few months, the air traffic, especially on the weekends, has become unbearable. I have counted at some point every 10 to 15 seconds. In a 9-hour period, that is about 3,000 plus flights. How can this be possible in a town the size of Camarillo? Where did all these planes come from? So I'll go ahead and turn to the panel.
I'll take a shot at that. We did, both airports, Oxnard and Camarillo, saw an increase in the last several months of air traffic, mostly due to Van Nuys Airport. They had 2 runways. One of them was closed for about 3 months, just recently reopened. So one of those 2 runways was closed, so that kind of forced that normal traffic that utilized that airport, the 2 runways, to kind of go to our airports and other airports in the area. So that's probably what I would attribute that change, if you've seen that.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Keith. Thanks. Okay, this is a technical advisory question. Does the BC Transportation Commission have any role or input on the study? Are they provided briefings? And then there's a little bit more here. I can't quite read all of it. So if this is your question, you can raise your hand and you can further explain. Go ahead, Erin.
All right, I'll go ahead and start with the answer to the first part. VCTC, the Ventura Transportation Commission, has been involved in the Part 150 study from the beginning. They have participated on the Planning Advisory Committee as well. And they are familiar with the noise exposure maps, which we'll be providing copies to them at the conclusion of this study.
Great, thank you, Erin. Okay, next question. Do all alternative approaches pass over Old Town? And can pilots fly wherever they want after taking off? It's like a hot potato.
Well, I'll just start with basic things. Can pilots fly wherever they want? So you've heard in the presentation, IFR, EFR, visual flight rules, instrument flight rules. EFR, those are much more open where pilots are flying usually smaller airplanes. Our focus with this consulting team is the instrument side of that, the IFR side of it. So two answers. One is yes, small airplanes typically, but even large planes can fly in various areas within 3 miles of the airport. You will see them in different locations. I'll now pass the mic to the instrument side and the options that have been looked at.
That's spot on. For the IFR side, we have a little more control on dictating where exactly the aircraft are going to fly. And so, as we talked about, we're going to be looking at the whole gamut of different options for trying to find a path for the aircraft to take that puts them on a path that is away from congested areas of the community and helping to mitigate some of those noise issues. So for that includes IFR departures or instrument departures and instrument approaches.
Great, thanks, Alec. Okay, we're going to take the next question. Camarillo Airport won't be used for commercial or large cargo. Will the Oxnard Airport be used for commercial or large cargo? If so, what will the impact be on Camarillo?
So Oxnard Airport does maintain its Part 139 commercial airport certificate. It still maintains that. Hasn't had service there in 17, 18 years. Candidly, that's not likely to happen. We've talked to airlines trying to attract them to Oxnard. Realistically, it's probably something more like advanced air mobility, the Jetsons, the air taxi, electric airplanes. That's probably what will happen. Some smaller electric air taxi kind of service to Burbank, LAX, or Santa Barbara. That's more likely in the future. Air cargo, we haven't had anybody that's been interested in air cargo at Oxnard at this point. Could it happen? Possibly. But for both airports, we run into limitations in the runway capacity, the size of aircraft that those two runways can handle, which is about 100,000 pounds. And that is not what cargo airplanes and even airline, 737 aircraft, which is a Southwest size airplane, is 180,000 pounds. So that exceeds, the capacity of both the runways. So not likely either of those.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, next question. The volume of flights has increased dramatically in the last few years. Is the city or county considering limiting the number of planes that can come in each day?
This has been discussed over the last 3 years. We have limitations to what we, as the county, can do because we're part of the FAA national system. We cannot limit specific aircraft numbers. We're prohibited from doing that.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, the new offsets appear to go over Village, the park development. Am I wrong? Banking right over my house and fast during high traffic times and no apparent weather conditions. This is a change from its customary pattern. Is this temporary? And this is my favorite. P.S. Jeanette is great.
There's actually 2 questions there.
Yeah.
One's on the other side. Yes.
Got it.
one's on the
Yes, thank you. So you want to...
Well, I'll start with the first and most important thing is what we're doing here with this consultant is never going to be move a problem from one location to another. So we will work with this consultant, look at those options, but the end goal cannot be moving a problem to another part of the community. So that's what will be looked at heavily as we go through this process, which is why it takes a year and a half to get through that and having those discussions. So I'll start there. Yes, Jeanette's great.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to get that second part. I have attended all the meetings and have appeared and and have appreciated the communication and transparency of the steps. The voluntary fly friendly program has definitely improved loud, large, middle of the night landings over my house. However, in the last few weeks, the big jets have been, and I'm sorry, do you want to, have been making, banking, okay. Hard turns over her house. So I think you kind of answered that, but.
Yes, and the other larger planes in particular, I don't want to point fingers, but we've had a professional football team that does some spring training in the area. So we have things that happen that sometimes tweak what happens. Naval Air Station, Point Magoo has training that goes on, not obviously our airport, but in the vicinity. So there's things that do change for us. That unnamed cowboys that show up once a summer do sometimes cause some of those things.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, Old Town resident on Kenneth Street, jets loud, disturbances directly over my house. How do you honestly feel about our property values as more and more of the jets invade our lives day and night?
I guess I would answer this way is we are committed by all the things we've talked about tonight and the consultant that we've just hired to do the best we can to mitigate those. So that's our commitment to it. It's ongoing. We'll continue to look at new ways. Again, this is a big one. And we're not waiting for the Part 150 study to be done and accepted. We know where the majority of our noise concerns come from. And so we've started this process in advance of even it being finally approved from the FAA. So I'd answer that.
Okay, next question here, and I can't read all of it, so if this is yours, please raise your hand. What is the long-term business goal? Does Ventura County have something the airport? That was yours. Okay, what is the long-term business goal of the airport?
I touched on it earlier on my presentation. Is that the board of supervisors have asked the airport team to develop the airport in a way that is beneficial to all the stakeholders in Ventura County. So that is not just the businesses or the pilots at the airport, but that's also the stakeholders, the community around the airport. So to answer your question is, our mission, our goal is to make these two facilities very viable, whether that's the businesses and the jobs at the airport. And we've talked about the support we provide to the sheriff and the fire helicopters that earlier in this year were very vital to this community to have those services, the helicopters based at the airport. But it's also doing this process and what we can do to best mitigate those operations with our community members. So it's holistic, it's all of those things combined. Yes, we want viable airports. We're an enterprise fund, so we don't take county general funds. We are self-sufficient, and that's obviously important to the county so that they can focus their resources on other important things in the county. And to date, we're doing that.
Okay, next question. What is the percentage of IBR planes in Camarillo versus the other planes that can apparently fly wherever? VFR, sorry. Well, this is a different one. Yeah. Okay. So VFR, not IBR. Another question that goes with that, what percentage of flights use VFR?
We don't have that information right at our fingertips, but it could be found in Chapter 2, which is the forecast chapter of the noise exposure maps document. So that if you go to the noise study website, there's Chapter 2, forecast, information about the IFR and VFR splits should be in there.
So you guys don't have any idea what percentage of planes for this one category you can help, and the other percentage of planes that
I could take a break and look it up, go to that resource, but I don't know it off the top of my head here.
I'm sorry, it's like strange you come to a presentation like this and not have an idea of that.
Well, let me answer it this way. We know that 90 to 95% of our noise comments every month, every year total, come from Old Town regarding jet arrivals. So I'll answer it that way. That's why this partnership with this consulting team is important. The other is up on the hill, just north of the airport, is VFR traffic coming and departing the airport. That's the other 5% of our noise comments in a given year. So 95% of our noise comments, and that's 90+% are instrument, at least on the instrument approach, is what's causing our noise issue.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Thank you. Thanks, Keith. Okay, next question, and we have about 8 minutes left. Can you please describe what happens? What is the conversation, disciplinary action, written warnings when a pilot lands after midnight or into the wee hours of the morning? I call the hotline and report the disturbance, but still don't see improvement in the late night noise.
I would answer it this way, is that if you've been with us through this journey over the last 2.5 years, we can't violate or discipline a pilot for landing at the airport. In our joint powers agreement, because that was grandfathered in with the FAA, we can't take action for a pilot that departs from midnight to 5. There are things we can't do. There's nothing that we can do specifically to violate or penalize a pilot for coming in. However, with that said, that's the areas that we focus on with pilots and the fly friendly, which we have seen, I don't know this specific instance, but we have seen improvements by working with pilots in asking them not to fly, basically from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Those are our fly quiet hours. We can't discipline them, but we talk to them about a partnership with our community, and that's important to our community. So we have seen reductions in numbers of jet aircraft in particular coming in and out of the airport during those hours, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. So I would answer it that way.
Okay, thank you, Keith. We have time for a few more, and then we're going to close this session and open up for the formal public hearing, which, again, you can make comments, and we will be receiving those, but we won't be answering. Okay.
Can I clarify?
Yes, please, go ahead. I thought about that.
So everybody understands, again, the way the FAA process is when we move into that is that we can't answer, but what happens is your question is documented as a part of the 150 study, and it's answered in writing ultimately several weeks or a month later, and that's part of the whole document. So it will be answered, but it's got to be captured and then written answer. All that is a package of the Part 150 study. And then again, a reminder, we're going to be open again after that closes so the very last one of you has your questions answered. If we've missed it in this session, or you want an answer as you go through.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, a few more here. There are no penalties for making noise, and it is not clear what will be in place to monitor noise. So what does the study accomplish?
Hopefully, we over the last 2.5 years, what does it accomplish? It's an FAA process to identify, we've done the noise metrics, we've identified, let's face it, you're all here because you know there's noise issues. What we've listed out multiple times is our commitment to what we're going to be doing, working with pilots, ongoing, can we move the flight approach, can we make new flight approaches, publish those for pilots to use to get them away from the community. So hopefully you understand what it does is document all of that. Ultimately, it's taken to our county board of supervisors who approve it, which memorializes the issues and our commitment, Department of Airports, what we as a county are going to continue to do until the next time we do a Part 150 study 10, 20 years from now. So it's our commitment. So that's what this whole process does, is lock that in, our commitment to this issue.
Thank you, Keith. Okay, last one, and then we're going to put a pause on this and move to the public hearing. I'm thinking of moving from Mission Oaks to Leisure Village. How much airplane noise will there be?
I for sure will not answer that question. Here's my best answer to you, and I've had this question over many years, is go spend some time at the new place you're looking at, all times of the day, weekends, nights, days, spend some time there and get to know the community and the air traffic. Again, we've got, as you saw in the presentation, a lot of airports in this area. Santa Paula, Oxnard, Camarillo, Point Mugu Naval Air Station, Burbank. We get calls into Burbank, LAX. So lots happening.
Okay, thank you, Keith and panel, and for all of your questions. Now we're going to take a quick break, 5-minute break. We're going to get set up, and we're going to open up for the public hearing. So you can hang tight, go get a snack. We'll convene in 5 minutes.